Welcome back, traders. I hope all of you guys had a great and productive weekend and are ready to come back and trade with us once again. The first setup I want to share with you guys is GBPAUD. So as you guys can see, following last week's candlestick closure with an indecision, we did have this follow through as expected. If you guys look back to my previous video analysis, I was expecting a bearish follow through to occur, and that's exactly what happened. Unfortunately, we did not get to have an entry as price failed to have a retest, therefore not allowing us to have a good entry position. Nonetheless, I still have a setup on this, and I do see price continuing to push to the downside, and I'll explain why. Now, if we were to drop down on the daily time frame, just quickly, you guys can see how price was in an overall uptrend. Simply, you guys can see how we were making higher highs and higher lows formation, and you guys can just see price is just pushing up higher and higher. But then over here is where price starts to act very interestingly. We had a lot of wicks being thrown to the upside and to the downside, ultimately showing us that price is now on shaky ground right now, and price ultimately had a huge push to the downside, breaking the overall market structure to the upside. So you guys can see here, if we look at the most recent higher highs and higher lows formation, price actually broke below the previous higher low, telling us that market structure is now broken, and now we could see price actually switch to back towards the downside. Now this right here was our previous higher low, and this right here was our higher high. So from here it was our higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, and you guys can see how price had a huge bearish shooting star closing below the higher low point over here, and then we had a loss of momentum here. We pushed up, and then we continued to push back towards the downside. So this shows us that market is now in a bearish trend. Now with our bearish sentiment, obviously with the weekly candlestick and the market structure being broken on the daily, we have a huge bearish bias on GBPAUD. Now all we need to look for is a proper entry position. Now if we were to drop down on the 4-hour time frame, you guys can see how we are making a subtle market structure here as well on the 4-hour time frame, and you guys can see right here with this price over here at 1.99, the rejection here was our lower high. We pushed back to create a lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, and now price is actually pushing back down to create a new lower low. Now with the way that this market structure is set, I am expecting price to push back up to create a retracement, and then we can look for continuation back towards our next target of 1.92. Now with that being said, we could also look for more confluence on top of the 3 confluence we already have. You guys can see if we were to just use our fib tool from the high point over here down to the low point, assuming that this will be the low point, we can expect price to come up and push back up into 1.95140, which was the singular wick low previously and was acting as a nice level of support. Now with also the fib retracement, we can also see a potential trend line here being in play as well. I don't really use trend lines that often. However, in such circumstances, it's just good to use it as a confluence. So you guys can see we can look for something like this to occur. Price comes up, has a rejection off of this trend line, throws a wick to the upside. We would have our snipe entry over here, and then we can look for a nice short opportunity back to the downside at 1.92, which would give us around 300 pips, and our stop loss can just be around over here, which would be a nice 55 to 50 pip stop loss.